So I'm very happy to welcome today our two guests, Anusha Shrivastava and Izabela Rutkowski. Anusha is from the statistics department and Izabela is from the mathematics of finance department. Have a lot of experience to share with all of you about networking, and really looking forward to hearing all of their tips. So I will go ahead, Anusha and Izabela, I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves further at all,
Sure.
Just get started with your presentation.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. So I'm Dr. Anusha Shrivastava. I'm the Director for Career Development and Alumni Relations at the Department of Statistics, where I've been for over 5 years at this point. If you've looked up my LinkedIn profile, as you should have, because in any session on networking, you want to know more about the speaker than they know about you. If you have looked up the LinkedIn profile, you already know that I spent more than 20 years as a business reporter in different newsrooms in 3 different countries, including the Wall Street Journal in New York. I left that job to join the journalism school at Columbia University. I'm an alumna, as is my colleague Izabela Rutkowski, and we first worked there together. Now, I'm at the Department of Statistics. She's with the Math of Finance group. The reason I mention all of this to you is that this is how you learn to network. You find out about every person that you're interacting with. You look them up on LinkedIn and you connect with them. The ways to connect with them is what we're going to discuss in today's workshop. And I'm going to share my screen, but before I do that, can I request you all to turn on your cameras? Because when you're networking, you want to be present and in the room. You want people to associate a name with a face, and that's how you will network more easily. If you're just a box with a name on the screen, it is very difficult to connect with you and interact. You will find it easier to do this when you have your camera on. We can see you smiling and we can talk to you, okay? So go ahead and do that. I'm going to share my screen. We'll run through one PowerPoint. Then I'll hand it over to my colleague, Izabela, and then we'll go back to another PowerPoint and we'll practice all our tips for networking, okay? So let's get started. Izabela, you want to introduce yourself while I start my share screen?
Sure. My name is Izabela Rutkowski, as you can see on Zoom. I'm Assistant Director of Career Development and Alumni Relations at the Math Finance program. Welcome, Math Finance students. I see some familiar names. Thank you for joining. And as Anusha mentioned, before joining the Math Finance program, I worked at Columbia Graduate School of Journalism, where I was advising graduate school students of journalism career development. So Anusha, I see that you have your PowerPoint app, so why don't you start? And then we'll move to networking on LinkedIn, to my presentation after yours.
Sure, absolutely. So given that we are all in a virtual atmosphere these days, we need to learn how to network from home. Right? If we were in person on campus, it would be very different from what we are doing right now, but we need to be equipped to do both. So let's talk about how to network from home in the current atmosphere. Let's go to this. Before I even start giving you tips, can I hear from a couple of students what they think networking is? What do you believe networking is? What does it mean when someone says to you, you need to network to find yourself a job?
I think Anna is raising her hand.
Okay, go right ahead.
Not that I'm a professional at all, but I understand it to mean growing my group of connections, growing that wider circle. That might be through my job, it might be through my peers or professors, and it might happen in various spaces. For me, it's happening a lot on LinkedIn right now, but just making those personal connections that can go to professional ones, or sometimes it's the opposite. It's a professional connection that can expand into a more personal one where a person becomes your mentor or something like that.
Excellent. That's great. Absolutely. We find connections wherever we are and we expand them, right? So We build on the connections we already have. If you look around the room, all the people that you meet in this workshop, as well as Rachel, Francesca, Izabela, myself, you can start networking with us, right? You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and then you can see the connections that we have. You also connect with everyone in your class. You connect with your professors, you connect with other administrators, and you start connecting with employers and other people that you meet during your time at Columbia, right? Aside from that, you discover people in new settings, right? Now, if we were not in this virtual world, you would be going for a walk. Maybe you still do. And when you do, make sure that the people you meet know what you're doing and the kind of job that you may be looking for, right? Because they should think of you as that person they need to reach out to when they hear about a job opening. So unless they know what you're interested in, they are not going to think about you. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I go for outdoor yoga classes these days. I can do that because I'm not commuting to the city and I have an extra 45 minutes a day that I can devote to doing these yoga classes. When I go for the yoga classes, I try and wear Columbia t-shirts, right? Some of them say journalism school and some of them say Department of Statistics. Why do I do that? I want everyone in the yoga class to know who I'm affiliated with. And lo and behold, one of the ladies in my class is a professor of machine learning at NYU. Good connection to have? Yes? And she would not have known this, and we may not have gotten talking about it unless I had worn that t-shirt. So this is just an example of how even without saying something, I have messaged to the people around me that I'm connected with the Department of Statistics at Columbia University, right? So you could be holding a bag that says Columbia University. You could be holding your coffee mug that says Columbia University, something that tells people where you're from and may lead to a conversation, right? The check-in person otherwise said to me, oh, I'm from Columbia as well. So I established a new connection, right? So the purpose of explaining this to you is every bit of your day, you could be networking without actually going and clicking on LinkedIn links. Because yes, your LinkedIn is the most powerful tool to network, but you can be doing this from home even during the pandemic. And you know that people are looking for connections because everyone has been isolated since March and they want to talk to people. How do we diversify the network? You step out of your bubble. Your bubble could be your class, it could be where you're studying, it could be your neighborhood. How do you step out of your bubble? You join classes or groups that you may not naturally have been affiliated with. So you talk to people from different industries, people from different areas, not just within the country, it could even be overseas now, right? A lot of the alumni from your program could be spread out all over the world. And this is the perfect time to reach out to them because A, they may have time to connect with you, and B, if they're working from home, then they can take out time at the beginning or end of their workday to be able to talk to you. So another example, I teach a professional development class. In the past 6 weeks, I've brought in 23 guest speakers from all over the world to talk to my students. Many of them are alums of the program. I had people joining from California and I had people joining from Hong Kong. And all of that is possible only because we are in a virtual setup right now. So I'm saying this to you because it seems like I'm stuck at home. How do I network? Well, this is one way of doing it. You reach out to people online and see who's willing to talk to you. Join groups other than those that seem like the obvious ones for you, because this is one time that you can explore. Where do you want to work? Where are the alumni from your class working? And which groups are they part of? Can they introduce you to other people? Can they connect you or give you examples of the groups that they have joined that you may not have heard about, right? All of that. We talked a little bit about this already. Go beyond geography. You don't have to restrict yourself. You can network with people across time zones. You can also, on your LinkedIn, find groups based on your profile. And I know Izabela is going to tell you much more about the LinkedIn networking, so I'm not going to dwell on that. Let's talk about introductions. You have to share what you have in common with the person that you're trying to network with, because that sparks a conversation. Now, if I were meeting Izabela for the first time, for instance, then the first thing I would notice about her is that she is also an alumna of the journalism school, right? If I was looking up Rachel, for instance, I might notice that she worked at CCE a few years ago and then came back to Columbia. So I have a starting point as a conversation starter. Same thing with Francesca. She and I used to attend a career services meeting many years ago. So you find what is common between you and the person that you're talking to, and then build on that relationship. Now, the only way to do that is to first know something about them. That's the only way you'll know that you have something in common with them. Okay. How do you start the conversation other than if you really have no connection with them? Look up and check. Have they posted something on LinkedIn recently? Have they shared a story? Have they written something? Have they worked on a project? So find out something that they've done, or look up the industry or sector that they're in. And this way you can show an interest and tell them that you're interested in working in the same sector, and could they share tips with you about it or talk about their career. Don't ask for information that is very obvious and is already on the internet. I have heard from some alums that students reach out to them and then ask the most obvious questions like, what does your company do? Well, why are you trying to connect with me if you don't even know what my company does? Right? So make sure that you have done some research on the company that the person is working at so that you can ask them intelligent questions. Okay, so online impressions count. What do we do? If we were on campus, we would show you the importance of a firm handshake. We are not on campus, so we can't really show you that, and you really can't shake hands with people, but you still want to make a good impression. How do we do that? We make sure that our digital presence is cleaned up. Because we are on Zoom calls and we're using Google Hangout and so on to meet people, we want to make sure that visually as well, we are prepared. And I'm sure by this time, you know about using virtual backgrounds, lighting on your face, not having a camera behind, not having a window behind you so that you're backlit. All of those are basics at this point. So make sure that you have cleaned up all of this. And when you step out and meet someone virtually, you're putting your best foot forward. Clean up your LinkedIn profile and also talk about the things that you have in common when you have that first conversation. Think about what you can offer. Many times students feel like, if I talk to an alum or an employer, why should they spend the time talking to me? Remember that you are a resource for them as well. They are also expanding their network by talking to you. So if they are a hiring manager for a particular team, or if they know someone who is looking for someone to hire, now they know someone at your department, they know you, and they know some of the people that you have access to, and now you are a resource for them. If they want to find out something about, I'm talking about statistics because that's where I am right now, maybe they need help in parsing some data. And now they know they can reach out to you, and you can suggest books that they might be able to read or courses they might be able to take, or to solve some of their project problems, right? So treat yourself as a resource. And then if you know that they are interested in a particular topic, maybe you can read more about it and share it with them. Because once you've had that initial conversation, the relationship could die unless you have something to offer to them, something fresh and new to offer to them at each point. So how do you continue that conversation? You read something that you think they may be interested in and share it with them, right? Okay. Now, aside from the one-on-one interactions, you have to find common themes, and you have to figure out what applies to your life and what you can use so that you can network with people. So it can be interests that are not just professional, but either through reading something, it could be podcasts that you're both listening to, and also see if you can share what you have learned with your classmates. And then if they tell you that they used either a book or a project to connect with an alum, maybe you can try the same. Okay, so you need to be talking to everyone around you. How do you start out? Start right now. And the simple goal is reach out to one new person each week. I think one is actually a very, very small number. I'm more ambitious than that. I always say reach out to 5 new people each week. And then I say, out of those 5 people, maybe you will form a good connection with 1 or 2. But if you did that, think about the number of weeks in a year. 52 weeks in a year, 52 multiplied by 5, even if each of those connections don't work out and you have only 2, right? So on average, you would still get 100 new connections every year if you started out with maybe 2 or 3 per week. But if you didn't make that effort, then you have 100 fewer connections than you started out with, right? Because you have the potential to have 100 new connections every year. Invest in your network. What does this mean? Say you're looking for a job and now you need references and people who will recommend you for the job. That's not the time to reach out to your professors to say, I'm looking for a job, can you recommend me? Right? Because that means that you're reaching out to them only when you need them. Instead of that, if you have a strong relationship and you stay in touch with people throughout the year, then they don't feel when your email pops up in their inbox that you're reaching out to them only when you need to use them. So stay in touch with everyone that you already know by sending a quick note, checking in on them, and updating them. Let's say you got a new job or you started some new project. Send them a line and tell them about it. Tell them how they helped you when you started looking for a job or when they were teaching you, right? So you have to keep refreshing that network. One of the ways that I've been telling the people in my professional development class to stay in touch with others is to post a thank you note on LinkedIn. Tag the person that you learned something from, right? Take a picture, take a screenshot, post it and say thank you. And that way you've publicly acknowledged that you learned something from them. And they will remember that. So when you reach out to them for help, they already know you and they remember you. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing now. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer now, or we can wait till the end. Either is fine. No? Okay, so I guess we'll wait till the end of the session. I'm handing you over now to Izabela Rutkowski, my colleague from the Math Finance Department, to tell you about LinkedIn and how you can network using LinkedIn.
Thank you, Anusha.
Sure.
I will start with sharing a very, very brief video. So bear with me for a moment. job seekers hope that their message will, hold on, let me just make sure that this is here, will result in such a quick action. So however, to increase the chances of someone answering your note and helping you in your job searching process, you need to have a professional network. And building your professional network doesn't happen overnight. So during my presentation, I will share you a few tips on how to do that. And we'll start with, we'll cover 3 sections. So we'll start with talking about your LinkedIn profiles and improving each of the sections of your LinkedIn profiles. Then we'll talk about creating a brand on LinkedIn, and we'll move into how to connect while using LinkedIn. So let's talk about your photos. So that's the first thing that people see when they open your LinkedIn profile. So you have to make sure that your photos have good lighting, that they're inviting, and they say, I want to work with that person. Here are a couple of qualities of bad LinkedIn photos. Bad LinkedIn photo has a low quality. Bad LinkedIn photo doesn't focus on your face. You look unpleasant or impersonal, and the background is too busy, or it has poor lighting. So I see that many students use their passport photos as their LinkedIn photos, and that's not a great idea because passport photos usually are not the best. And you don't need a professional photographer to take your photo. You can just go outside, ask your friend or a family member to take a photo with your iPhone, and that will work. So photo number 1. Then you have to think about your name. Your name has to have all the elements that you include on your resume, and it has to be your real name. So if you are using a nickname or a different form of your name, you have to put it in parentheses, and you have to stay consistent. So again, full name, and make sure that you're findable, because there are many people who have similar name to yours. So Google yourself and search for yourself in LinkedIn, and make sure that your name pops out, and that you have all the elements needed. And it's also important to edit your URL. And instead of having a series of numbers and letters, you put your name, and you use that URL on your resume to make it easier for the recruiters and hiring managers to find you on LinkedIn. They can basically just click and see your expanded profile on LinkedIn. You have to make sure that you optimize what others see when they first open your LinkedIn profile. And that means the picture on the top. So that's one of the ways to create your brand. For me, it's Columbia University, but if you're in journalism, it might be a newspaper. If you are, mathematics of finance students, it could be something else. But that picture will tell people that this is you, that this is part of your brand. Then, of course, your name, your title. We'll talk about this in a second, and then the about section, because that is also something that people see when they first open your profile. So title. So you have to choose the right one, because as you know, when people search for you, sometimes they only see your picture and a title before they click to see your profile. And one of the first no-nos is misleading. So I see that many of our students say that they're researchers at Columbia Quant Group, for example. So Columbia Quant Group is a student club. And when you say that you're a researcher at a student club, that's all great, because maybe you are a researcher, maybe you're doing something there. But it misleads people, because it might seem like you want to show that you're working there full time. Like, the recruiters might not know what you're up to when you're saying something like this in a title. And remember that you shouldn't include abbreviations in your titles. GSAS or Math Finance, MAFN might sound familiar to you, but not to the outside world, outside of Columbia. So no abbreviations. And you have 120 characters to play with. So here are some good titles. Graduate student, Columbia University, Mathematics of Finance, seeking summer 21 opportunities. As you can see, that student is right away saying that he or she is a graduate student, in what program, seeking what. Another good title is Mathematics of Finance student, Columbia University, seeking full-time roles, then software Python/C++, 2021 graduation. So when you include a title like this, people to whom you're connecting with will right away see who you are and what are your interests, and why you're reaching out to them. And then a summary. So your summary is the text box at the top of your LinkedIn profile, just below your photo. It's an open-ended space, 2,000 characters, where you can give an overview of your professional life. And the first 250 words is what recruiters see before they click see more. So what makes a good summary? The use of the first person, not a third. So not John Adams is a student, but I'm a student. Of course, I'm a student is not the great opening line, but that's how you should write it. And you should use your voice, because in a resume, you have to use a specific format. It is very formal. In the summary, you can show your character. So you can do that here. You should engage. You should tell a story, show your personality, and as always, be brief, because you want people to read the whole thing. Experience. It's very, very important to include logo of the company leading to their page. So recruiters can click on that logo and click on the company page and read more about them. And that's especially important for international companies or smaller companies that are not well known. And you should start the description of your job with an overview, especially if you have experience working in a different industry. So if you start with an overview before you go into the details and the things that you built in the job, then it's going to be helpful to the hiring managers. Your experience section should be keyword rich, and that should, of course, include the keywords important in your industry. Just like in your resume, you should include lots of action words, not responsible for. You should say led, grew, reduced. Projects and accomplishments should also go into your experience section. Make sure that you have correct tenses. If you did something in the past, that's past tense. For things that you're doing currently, it's present tense. And a LinkedIn experience section is your expanded resume. So whatever doesn't fit into your resume, you can put into the experience box. Then education, again, school logo and a link. You want to be associated with that crown, right? So definitely put a school logo there. I mean, link to the company page, to the school page. Include classes, projects, and professors. And the reason for that is that sometimes the recruiter might be an alum of the program or might know the people in the industry who are also professors. So that's a really good way to tell people that you are part of that industry and you have something in common. You can put your honor societies and clubs in education section. That's something that you often don't have space to put on when you're writing your resume. So you can always put it on LinkedIn. And then don't forget about the links and media. You can always link to your projects and anything that you've done during your time at Columbia or other schools. Okay, and then the skills section. Add skills and ask to be endorsed. And those are not only word processing skills and PowerPoint, right? You have to think about the skills that are needed for the jobs that you're applying. So definitely think about that. Ask people to endorse you for those skills. And then recommendations. That's a very, very important part on LinkedIn. And so when someone says, thank you, did a great job with X, then you say, well, thank you. Can you put this on LinkedIn? So make sure that you ask for recommendations early on in the process to keep the momentum going, because if you finish your internship and you ask for a recommendation a year later, it might be too late. Right, so you want to make sure that it's something that happens immediately, and you want to make sure that it's easy for your recommender to give you the recommendation. So you can send instructions, you can send a link, but make sure that you do this while you're still here in school. So now we're going to move to the second portion of my PowerPoint presentation, and it's about building your professional brand using LinkedIn. So let's talk a little bit about why it's important to build your professional brand. You want to be seen as a professional in your industry. You want to be seen as a person who knows a lot about finance or statistics or journalism or any other area. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to follow companies and you have to interact with them. So when you follow a company, for example, McKinsey, everyone else will see it in your interests, and that is visible to everyone, including your third connections. So it's expected to you to follow the company for which job you're applying. So if you apply for an internship at McKinsey and you're not following McKinsey, it's not okay. And they can see that. And in addition to that, you can learn a lot about the companies and the industry if you follow them. So here's an example. I follow Citadel, and everyone who wants to work on the buy side in finance, should be following Citadel. And I'm assuming that most of those students want to work in Citadel. It's one of the major hedge funds. And so if you follow them, like I do, you can learn a lot. Let's analyze this first point, first blurb on the left side. So a couple of weeks ago, they posted saying that there is a talk by this person who works at Citadel, and he's a global head of government and regulatory policy. And he's giving this free talk on October 16th. So if you follow Citadel and if you really want to work for them, maybe you attend this free talk and you learn about what they do. And that could give you a couple of talking points for your interview. They also posted something here you can see it on the right side. It's about their summer interns. So let's read this. Our summer interns learned firsthand from leaders, including Citadel CEO, Ken Griffin. Well, if you are interviewing for Citadel, you need to know who the CEO is, right? So this is one of the ways to learn about who is the CEO, but you should also Google it before your interview. But here you can see that the interns interacted with their CEO and head of ETF. And here you also have the name of that person. So you know that the internship is it's more than just working, which is great. And what you can also learn is that their internships are open. So for example, I follow Citadel, and that was news to me because last year their internships were open much later in the year. So only because I follow them on LinkedIn, I can see that it's time to apply. So a lot that you can learn from following companies. And then in addition to following, you should like those posts, you should share them. And as Anusha mentioned, you should tag people when you do so. And this is a way to create a professional brand. The second step is to follow industry influencers and recruiters. So for example, I'm very interested in learning about getting a job. So I follow this person whose name is Andrew Seaman, and I know him personally, but he's the editor on LinkedIn. And he's in charge of Get Hired hashtag. He has webinars and a ton of very useful information. So I follow him, and all of this pops up on my LinkedIn. So every time I scroll through my LinkedIn, I learn something new. So you should find Andrew Seamans of your industry, right? So for example, Mark Rose is a professional who works for one of the investment banks, and he's very generous with his advice for students, and he shares a lot of industry insights. He explains things, he gives free talks. So if you are a finance student, you have to like and follow Mark Rose. You have to interact with his posts, and I'm sure that there are many more Mark Roses out there, and in this finance industry, which I'm very familiar with, and also other industries. So find the industry influencers and interact with them. Another way to build your professional brand is to join professional groups. So here, I'm not going to walk you through how to do it, but you can take a screenshot if you're interested. But you can do it through two ways, right? You can search the groups by keywords and names, or you can browse the groups that LinkedIn recommends for you. It's important to be part of those groups, because you learn from professionals. They post papers, they post talks, they even share job tips. And by joining a group, you're getting a connection to the people inside of the group. So if you don't have LinkedIn Premium, you probably can't connect with your third connections. But if the third connection is part of a professional group in which you are a member, then you can connect with that person. So you can go around the third connection requests. So professional groups, join them. And of course, as Anusha mentioned, find and connect with alumni. So you can find them through your school's page. You can also do something that I call reverse lookup. So if you want to work for Citadel, go to the Citadel's website, search for alumni, and then search for people who work there, and then for alumni of your school. And you can join alumni groups on LinkedIn. Those are closed groups. Both Stats and Math Finance have those groups. I'm sure that other programs have them too. That way you can connect with people within the group. You can share things. You can learn things from alums. So now we're moving to the third part on how to make the first contacts, which is the most difficult part. So if you already have your LinkedIn in shape, you're already following the companies and influencers, and you know what's going on in their industry, you have to start sending invites, right? So when you send an invite, you have to include a brief note. And in order to have the brief note, you have to know what you have in common, just like Anusha mentioned, with the person who you're connecting with. It's okay to take notes because you'll be connecting with many people. So it's okay to have a document where you keep notes about others and why you want to connect with them and what you have in common and where they went to school. So you don't constantly click on their links, on their LinkedIn profiles. And here are some good practices for connecting. So first, you have to proactively reach out, right? You cannot be making an ask right away. You're connecting to learn, right? So you are connecting because you are researching the company. You're connecting because you want to get an informational interview about the company. And it's always helpful when someone introduces you to another person. So taking McKinsey one more time, as an example, one more time, it's a huge company. Let's say that you work for, or a person who works for one part of the company or one team, and you now know that person very well, you connected with that person, you had a few chats, but then you're very interested in the internship position in some other area of that company, some other team. So you ask your connection from team 1 to introduce you to team 2. And that introduction is going to be very valuable. And the person from team 2 might be much more inclined to answer your message and connect with you. And that's why it's important to have many connections. So when you send a connection request, again, personalize it in some way. So you have to say, maybe, how did you meet? How do you know the person? Why do you want to connect? So personalizing it will increase the chances of the exception and also conversation. And so don't just say, oh, I loved your article. So be able to say why you loved it. And then mistakes. So I just made it up, but let's say that I want to send that note, which I, by the way, saw similar notes being sent from by some of the students. Hi, my name is Izabela Rutkowski. I work at Columbia University. I can see that you work at NYU. I found an interesting opening at your team. Can you refer me? Like, what's wrong with this note? This person doesn't know me, and I'm just reaching out saying, hey, I want that job, give it to me, or like, help me. So this is a big no-no, right? You don't do that. So as you can see, it's important to cultivate a relationship and then after a while make an ask. But even the cultivation will help you because the person hiring manager might see that you're connected to 5 people from the company and you like their posts and you do many things that you're involved. So even before you make the ask, you are building up and you're helping yourself. And then when you have a good relationship with someone, you can ask to you can ask about an opening, just like you saw in that video. So here's an example of a good note that you can send. Hi, Mike. I see you graduated from Columbia Math Finance program 2 years ago and you are now working for UBS. I would absolutely love to follow a similar path to you. How did you do it? Could we perhaps connect on a 15-minute Zoom call and you share some insight ideas on how you pulled this off? Looking forward, and your name. So as you can see, the student who's sending that note did research and found out that Mike graduated from Columbia program. He's an alum 2 years ago, not too long ago, and is working for this company that the student wants to work for. And the student is saying that he would love to learn from Mike. How did he do it? And he's proposing something that is not very, very heavy on Mike. He's proposing a 15-minute Zoom call when Mike can share some insights. And people love talking about themselves. So I'm sure that Mike will say, yes, I will be available. So as you can see, this is a much better note than this. And the student is cultivating a relationship with Mike. Do we have any questions from the audience? Questions?
Izabela, I have a question. How do people know that their LinkedIn profile is as it should be?
What do you mean is as it should be? That is edited the way it should be, or?
That it's effective, that people are noticing it, that people will reach out knowing which sector they are in. How do they know that it's effective? What's a good way to test that your LinkedIn profile is effective for your sector?
That's a good question. I think that one of the things that you can test is keywords, right? Make sure that the profile is rich in the keywords that appear in the job descriptions of the jobs that you are interested in applying. So one way to do it is to observe job description, to look at the jobs, not only the internships, which are often have vague descriptions, but the entry-level roles or mid-level roles, and see what the employers are asking for, and make sure that you have those keywords early on, and maybe start putting those skills, in the skills section, ask for endorsements. And then companies, if you are interested in working in finance, then research the 10 biggest banks, 10 biggest hedge funds, and make sure that you follow them. And then you learn as you go, because you will be, if you have more connections, you'll be observing what they have on their LinkedIns. So you'll just copy what they're doing, basically, and you'll just, by osmosis, you'll just learn it. And I don't think that there is a way to test it, that you can submit your LinkedIn profile and say, hey, Google, tell me if it's okay in my industry. I think it's rather that, and also by connecting, that's one of the questions that you can ask when you're connecting with an alum or someone who works who's a practitioner. You can say, can you look at my LinkedIn and suggest if there is anything I can add or do?
Great, thank you. Other questions?
I have a question. Izabela, what if you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and don't hear back from them?
You can always follow up. You can follow up, or you can just, ignore it, because not every note will be answered. And sometimes it might be important to strategize and see if people who are on the top level, and they might be very busy, maybe not wanting to connect, but people in the industry who are only a couple of years out of school are more likely to respond to your messages, right? So maybe you want to revisit your strategy and see why people are not responding, or you have to make sure that your LinkedIn is okay and your message is fine. So the strategy is also important.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Izabela. I have a question. So if you connected with someone and he or she accepted your friend invitation, but when you send email or message to them, they did not reply, and even if after you followed up, they still did not reply to your message, what can you do in this situation?
Well, it really, maybe the person is no longer interested, or one of the things that you can do is also tag that person. If you see an interesting article and it's about something that the person does, you can say, hey, add in the name, I thought that you might be interested in this. And maybe that way you will remind the person about you. Do you have any other advice, Anusha, Rachel, and Francesca?
I think that all the tips that you offered were great. I actually would like to conduct a quick exercise, which is everyone who is in the room right now, could you type in your LinkedIn profile links right now? The reason I want you to do that is we talk about networking and we say, this is how we can do it. And I also said that you can start by networking right here in this room. So let's see your LinkedIn profiles in the chat box, and you can connect with each other. You can also offer feedback to each other on your LinkedIn profiles. And I'd be happy to get feedback on my own LinkedIn profile, right? So go ahead, type your LinkedIn profiles. And if anyone wants, you can share your screen and we can quickly go over it and see how we could improve it.
Great, that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Anusha.
Right? So anyone who's willing to volunteer, go right ahead. Or Izabela can pull up my LinkedIn profile and tell me how I can fix it. That's totally fine too.
Sure. Who wants to be a
I could volunteer.
Perfect.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so let me share my screen. I'm Deja, by the way. I am a master's in biotechnology student.
Great.
And I am just looking for permission to share my screen, which I actually don't see.
You should have permission. There aren't any restrictions. So
Oh, I was just over. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm also a full-time employee. So I'm only a part-time student at Columbia, and I'm a full-time employee at a pharmaceutical company in New York City as well. So so right now my profile is more geared towards my career and my job, just because you know, that's kind of been the focus. And I think with the experience that I have, I feel like if recruiters, or if I wanted to connect with someone, it would be more through the experience with my full-time job for right now. And I haven't updated it to kind of integrate what I'm doing at Columbia yet.
Well, that's one of the first things that you have to do, right? And you can also explain that in your about section, where you can say that you are a part-time student in addition to doing your full-time job. And as you can see, the black area is not very inviting. So maybe you can just add a little picture. I know that this is simple, but it helps. I like your picture a lot. And then in your title, you can squeeze in the fact that you are a student. You probably need more connections, right? But it's a good start. So the more connections you have, the better. Let's see.
Okay.
Can you go down?
So yeah, I will.
Do you want to look at the about section and offer some advice?
Sure. So I don't think we should go in that much detail just for now, Izabela. The reason I asked everyone to type in their LinkedIn profiles is they can connect with us, and if they want some advice, I'm happy to share. Right? But in general, in the about section, what you want to say is not just something about yourself, but also what you're looking for. Right? So if you say that you're already working and you're a student at Columbia, then I don't know what next steps should or could be. What is it that you're looking for? And if you provide a hint to that, then the employer knows that that's the area you're interested in, right? They might also have a question, you already have a job, why are you studying, and are you trying to change careers? Are you trying to build on what you already have, right? Something that tells you what your next step could be.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for the feedback.
Sure, and I can also see that your URL is not edited. So make sure that you edit your URL to reflect your name, your first name.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you for today's webinar too. This is very, very great.
Great.
Oh.
Thank you for volunteering. That was really brave.
Yes, yes, it is brave. But here's something I always say. When you're in a workshop like this, remember that neither Izabela nor I have a job to offer you today, right? So if there are things that can be fixed in a group like this, then you're better off when you actually apply for a job and you are going to an employer, right? An employer or a recruiter is seeing everything on LinkedIn, and you want to provide the best and most polished LinkedIn profile that you can, right? So if we fix it here among friends, then when a recruiter looks at it, you know that it's already polished and ready for the outside world. Now, all of you have LinkedIn profile links of everyone in the room. How would you reach out appropriately? Let's say you wanted to reach out to Izabela. What could you say in your LinkedIn profile link request that she would accept you? Lily or Jingya or Leon, anyone want to say how you would reach out appropriately to Izabela? No? Melody, if you were to reach out to Izabela today to connect on LinkedIn, what would you say?
Sorry, I cannot see the page, but at first, like, say something common, like, for example, we all attend to this workshop, and then finding something, for example, the school or the school year, and then see if we have the common connection, and see we both know somebody are. And then I just wondering if we can connect on LinkedIn, and I want to know more about your professional experience at ABC like this.
Sure, absolutely. Any other ideas? Anyone else before we move on to the next part? Anna, if you were to reach out to me, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd probably send a direct message, introduce myself as a current graduate student at Columbia. I'd also mention that I am a work-study student in Columbia. I'd cite my experience working at Columbia, and then perhaps if I can tie any of my professional experience for my 5 years outside of school. If there's anything relevant, I would message you with that information, and then send an invitation. I think it's called on LinkedIn.
Sure, absolutely. Great, thank you. Wengshin, do you want to tell us how you would connect with Rachel or Francesca? What would you say?
Yeah, just so that, for example, start with the fact that we attended this meeting together, and I show that I have really researched their background, and I'm interested in something they're doing or one of their past experiences, and how that I would like to maybe get to know them further.
Right.
Stay connected.
Absolutely. And to the question that was raised, that when you reach out to someone, they may or may not accept your LinkedIn request, or even if they did connect with you, they didn't follow up or they didn't respond to you, that's going to happen, right? Because think about all of us during the workday, and especially now in the virtual world where we, the boundary between work and life is blurred. We are on call at all times. It's not possible to connect with everyone and to respond to everyone's request, right? So be mindful of that. That's why I said that if you're trying to reach out to 5 people per week, maybe only 2 or 3 will respond to you. And even that's a pretty good rate, right? So don't be hurt by it. This is how the world is. Even in your professional life, when you start working, not everyone is going to respond to you immediately, right? For instance, Izabela, Rachel, Francesca, and I are in this workshop today. We'll be here from 10 in the morning till 11:30. When we go back to our email, how many emails do you think will be waiting for us in our inboxes? How many do you think? Or even in yours for that matter, right? It'll be a stack of emails, and we have to deal with them really quickly and get down to our real work too. Because just responding to emails is not work. There is real work to be done, right? So think about all the things that a professor, an administrator, an employer, or an alum has to deal with on a daily basis, aside from the LinkedIn requests that they are getting and the email requests that they are getting, right? So don't penalize them. They may get to it, they may not get to it, they may not connect with you. Some people are very particular about who they connect with on LinkedIn. There are some people who are happy to connect with you on Facebook, but not on LinkedIn. There are others who are willing to connect with you on LinkedIn, but not on Facebook, right? So I know one person, for instance, who regularly on Facebook will send out a PSA and say, I know you sent me a Facebook request. I try to keep my professional and my personal life separate, so I will not connect with you on Facebook. If you send me a LinkedIn request, I will connect with you. Fair enough? Because a lot of people don't want to connect with their bosses or former colleagues on Facebook. They're willing to do it on LinkedIn. So you also need to know the forum on which they are comfortable connecting with you, right? So that's something to think about as you expand your network. It may be that your former manager is willing to connect with you after you've moved on to another job. It may be that while you're still working with them or you're in the same team, they don't want to connect with you.
There's also something I just thought of. Remember that many people have their LinkedIn apps on their mobile phones, and they get those messages immediately. And something that I noticed, especially this year when we were all virtual, is that some students started to use LinkedIn like a private messaging channel to me, hoping to get my attention immediately all the time. And it's for emergencies, that is okay. But remember that if you are connecting with someone who you think of as your mentor or someone who's giving you advice, you should not abuse that. So be mindful of people's time zones, because your 9 a.m. is not 9 a.m. in California. You might wake somebody up. So be mindful of that.
Right. Okay, shall we move on to the third part of the presentation then, right? And we can come back to Q&A and any other thoughts. So in this case, again, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we will talk about interviews. Do you see my screen?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, okay.
There we go. Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, so what is the purpose of all this networking? You don't do it just for the sake of it, right? The goal of it is to get an interview, either an informational or a real job interview. Now, how do you ace that interview? Let's go over some tips, and then we can talk about what you can do to make sure that you do well while you're interviewing. Okay, so there we go. What's good about online interviewing? You don't have to travel. You don't have to worry about getting in the subway and being delayed or having someone drop coffee on you just before you are walking into that interview, right? What are the negatives? Technical issues. Maybe your Zoom's not working well, or your Wi-Fi connectivity is not good. And there are fewer body language clues. If you're in a room with somebody, you're much more comfortable interviewing because you can see them. You can see how long you're holding their attention. If it's on Zoom, it's really difficult, which means that you have to brush up all your interview techniques to present the best foot, right? And what are the things you need to do for that? You need to do your research beforehand so that you're not wasting their time and yours, right? Which you would do even in a real interview. You want to talk about how you will contribute to the company once you start working for them. This bit we've already talked about. You want to know everything that you can about the person interviewing you. You look up their LinkedIn, you check yours, and you find things that are in common. That is the whole purpose of networking, right? Find things in common so that you then have the best result, which is you end up working in a team that you want to be at, right? Okay. Some of this we've discussed. You want your online presence to be really polished. You want light on your face, either through, with sunlight or a clip-on light on a gray day like today. I don't know which time zone you're in, but if you're on the East Coast, it's raining and it's dull and you need some light on your face. You want the camera to be at eye level or slightly above, and you want to be looking into the camera so that you can, it looks like you're engaged. Your body language tells them that you're engaged and you're doing well at the interview. You want to be in a professional outfit. You want to use a clean background or a virtual background. You double check all the technology that you're using before you attend. You remove your cell phone, right? Make sure that it's on a do not disturb mode. You convey your value during the interview. This, by the way, is something you can practice within your network. When someone asks you about what you're doing and what you're looking for, you need to be prepared to share with your network who you are and list and talk about things that are not on your resume, that are not in your LinkedIn, okay? And so when you meet someone in an elevator, you might see something different. Meet meet someone at a grocery store, you might say something different. When you are in an online or professional group, you might say something different, and you will say something different to the alum that you have reached out to. So you want to talk about yourself, but talk about the skills and what is not evident from your resume. You prepare questions for the people that you're meeting. You show your curiosity, and you steer clear of all template questions, right? Which is, tell me how you got where you are. They've all been asked this question, and that's not ideal, okay? Follow up after. You send the people that you have met, either in workshops, in any sort of presentation, an interview, a thank you email, a quick note thanking them so that they remember who you are and what you discussed. Be specific, right? Talk about the 1 or 2 things you learned from a particular conversation. And when you reach out to them with that, you help increase your network, because this person is going to remember you. And when someone asks for a name for a particular position to be filled, they will know what you're interested in and they will connect you. Okay. And of course, if you're going for an interview, make sure that you know something about the interviewer. If you don't know who it is, ask the recruiter. HR will tell you about it, about who the people are who are interviewing you. So you know their names, you look up the LinkedIn profiles, and you're able to go for an interview and be able to connect with them. Every experience that you have prepares you for the next one. So whatever you've learned, if you made a mistake, no worries, you move on to the next one. Okay? The most important bit of networking and of interviewing, tell me about yourself. This we'll practice a little bit of, because it's really important when you're networking. No redundant information. Think about what you really want to share. Think about yourself as a billboard, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and how do you perfect the pitch about yourself. Okay, so let's discuss this a little bit more in detail. If you get asked the question, tell me about yourself. This is generally the first question in an interview, and think of it in a networking context as well. So I said to you, if you meet someone in an elevator, what you say to them is different than what you would say to someone in a classroom or to an alum or someone who's interviewing you. So who wants to take a shot at this? If you're asked the question, tell me about yourself, what would you say? Francesca, you want to give it a shot?
Sure. Hi, my name is Francesca Finelli. I am the Associate Director of Graduate Career Development at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. I previously worked for 5 years at the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, also at Columbia, where I oversaw the development of career services programming for the architecture and urban design students. I'm also currently a part-time student at Teachers College in the counseling psychology program, and I'm really interested about the intersection of career and identity and well-being for students. I really enjoy connecting students to employers and employers to Columbia University, and I really enjoy assisting students in their career development.
Great, thank you. So 2 things about this. This is more geared towards an interview for a job, right? If Francesca bumped into someone in the elevator, it's highly unlikely that she will say all of this, right? So if you bumped into someone in the elevator, Francesca, what would you say?
I would probably just give, I just tell them my current role. And I mean, I might mention my, the fact that I'm also a student, depending on kind of who it is. Again, audience, like if they're someone who's more mental health focused, it might make sense to. But yeah, I'd probably just start with my current job.
Right. Okay. So one of the most interesting things about Francesca's introduction was the last thing that she mentioned, which is she said she was interested in, and then she described the intersection between identity and, right? The reason I mention that is the person has your resume in front of them, right? So when they're asking you a question, they want to know something that's not on your resume necessarily and is a hook to continue the conversation. This is really important as you develop your networking skills. When someone asks you a question, in the response, there should be a lead or a hook into what the conversation should be, the direction the conversation could take. So if Francesca introduced herself to me and told me all of what she did, I sort of went, chuck, 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 I know this is what you do, this is what you're doing. But that bit about what she's interested in terms of intersection of identity and, whatever it is that she said, that is the part of the conversation that I would continue. So when you're networking, when you're talking to people, make sure that in your responses, you always have a bit of a tease, something that will make them want to know more about you, that will continue the conversation, that will help them ask you questions, right? Because what is networking essentially? It is connecting with people, using conversations, using common interests and common fields that'll help you get a job eventually, right? So anyone else want to give it a shot? All those who've been really quiet so far. Leon, Dongling, Lily, Jingia, anyone? Garda has a nice smile. You want to give it a shot? Tell me something about yourself. Remember what I said, you're in a room where we are not going to give you a job, but we can help you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm a master's student at the Quantitative Methods for the Social Sciences, studying data science. I'm currently transitioning my career from national security to data analytics, and I am specializing in machine learning, data wrangling, and communication. I'm looking for opportunities in the tech space, and I believe I can bring a little extra something into tech, coming from national security with kind of the precision and the problem solving skills, navigating a complex and uncertain world in national security, and translating into data science where I have to navigate a lot of uncertain data and missing data and translating it into impact.
Great, thank you. Which area would you want the employer or the person listening to you to follow up on, Garda? Because you mentioned national security, you talked about communication, and you talked about your interest in data analytics. Is there a particular area that you want them to talk more about or ask you the next question?
More so of my background in national security and how that can be translated into data analytics.
Okay, but is there a particular area that that you are a specialist, or you feel like you're an expert and you want the employer to ask you more questions on?
Sure. I have an interest in conflict prediction using machine learning. So I think I didn't really mention it, and I could have probably mentioned that, and that'd be very interesting.
Right. So remember how I said that one of the things in that introduction has to be a hook or a tease. And if you are an expert on conflict resolution or conflict management and are using data analytics to decipher it, say it. Say it so that then you're leading the conversation and you're allowing the other person the chance to ask you a question about something that you can discuss more in detail. That way you're in control of the conversation and you're also in control of the interview. You want to talk about areas that you're an expert at to show them that you're passionate about something. It could be any topic. It could be ice cream, right? But then they see through it that you're motivated, that you're passionate about it, and that you'll do a really good job because you're an expert at something. If you're an expert at one thing, you can be an expert at many things, right? You can learn about it and you can do well. So my suggestion is that you come up with a couple of bullet points about yourself as you expand your network. You create those bullet points for different situations, whether it is for meeting people in the elevator, at a yoga class, at the playground, at the grocery store, on campus, virtually, in an interview room, anywhere. And among those bullet points, the last one needs to be a tease that will help you guide the conversation. So think about what is unique and special about yourself, and you want people to ask you questions about it. Right? This could be either something that you have in common with the interviewer or something that is completely different and you think has a wow factor. They hear this about you and they say, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Or how did you do that? Now, how are you going to be able to do this? You have to practice with each other, right? So remember, in the chat box, we all connected with each other over LinkedIn, or will right after this workshop, right after this class. Make sure that the new people that you're meeting, you get on a call with them and you practice your introduction with them, following everything that we discussed today. Well, first, you're going to fix your LinkedIn profile the way Izabela asked you to, right? Then you're going to make sure that you all checked each other's LinkedIn profiles and made sure that it is as it should be, as it evolves. Then you're going to practice with each other.
And can we also talk about questions to ask during an interview? Because since we're covering the whole interviewing process, almost like, so maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because you touched on this briefly, Anusha, but maybe we can discuss bad questions and good questions to ask, right? Because, if each of you could, the advisors could come up with some bad questions that you heard from students, that'd be great, because it's an example of what not to do. So one of the questions that you shouldn't ask is obviously the one that Anusha mentioned, which is, tell me what does your company do, or what do you guys do? What do you do? Another one is, what's your conversion rate for the interns? Like, how many interns do you hire at the end of the internship? Right? A big no-no. You don't want to put the employers on the spot and ask how many of the 10 interns that you're hiring this summer are going to hire for full-time jobs. No, right? Another is, how much do you pay? Right? So that one I also heard. Do you, so if you're interviewing for internships, do you provide benefits? Right? So that's not a good question. What else? Do you have any bad questions to offer here?
So Izabela, I'll add a caveat. You do want to know about the salary and you do want to know about the conversion rate, but not in the first interview, right? And some of the questions you can ask the HR person. You don't have to ask the hiring manager, right? The HR person can tell you what the salary range for some job is. And you will eventually have to negotiate your salary anyway. But not
for internships, you usually don't negotiate, right? Like the internships usually have a set salary.
Sure.
For the jobs, yes, you have to negotiate. It's not a question. You always have to ask for more. But we can walk you through that when the time comes. Okay, but some bad questions, and then let's think about the ways to think about good questions.
I had a question. This was more a networking event that was asked to me, but I'd still think it's just a bad question is, do you believe in God? It was a very good learning opportunity for that student, because I quickly said that is not a good question to discuss. But usually, at least in America, we always say religion and politics are things you don't want to talk about in networking kind of spaces. So just keep that in mind, because they're hot button topics in the United States, and it's best to kind of leave those for maybe friends and family and other people you're chatting with.
Great. Actually, that is good. And there's one more thing that happened once. A student walked into my class wearing a t-shirt that had a gun on it. Okay. And I had to be really, really polite because this was a delicate matter. You don't want to send a message to someone or the first reaction shouldn't be, good Lord, why are you wearing that t-shirt, right? So be careful. Like we said, you have to be professional. When you're talking to people, some topics need to be avoided, but also some attire needs to be avoided, right? You really don't want to be walking around in a t-shirt with a gun on it.
Exactly. So
Right.
good questions to ask. Could be questions about the job itself, because sometimes the descriptions, as we discussed, are vague. So you might not understand what the person exactly does, and it's totally fine if you ask the interviewer to describe a little bit more about what is involved. Also, more advanced questions about the things involved in the job. So if you're applying for a specific position in a big company and they're responsible for one specific product, you can ask more. You have to do your research and have some base knowledge, and then you can ask more advanced questions. And then I think that some general questions are always good to have, good to have in your back pocket, like, what do you think makes a good intern? Right? Things like that you can ask in case you are run out of your questions, because it's good to have 3 questions, but sometimes the interviewer will answer will answer them before you get the chance to ask those questions. So it's good to have more questions just in case. And you don't want to grill the interviewer, right? Right? Do you agree? I mean, you don't want to make the situation or that you're putting them under the wall. And
Right, absolutely.
yeah,
you have to be careful that even though you're gathering information and you're trying to figure out if you're the right fit for that company or the company is the right fit for you, you don't want to put them in an uncomfortable position. So definitely you want to ask questions that are relevant.
I have sort of a pet peeve about interview questions, which is, you know, there are a lot of generic questions that are suggested, you know, ask what a typical day is like, ask, you know, and I think it's really the typical day one that when people ask it, there are ways of asking that question that are genuine and ways where it just seems like you looked at a list of questions beforehand and you're asking it and you're not even listening to the answer, or like the answer isn't going to affect anything. So I think I really like, and I think one theme throughout this whole presentation has been, you know, anticipating what knowing who your audience is. And so I think too, just with the questions you ask at the end of an interview, there should be an opportunity to reflect that you've done a little bit of research, to reflect that you're really interested in learning the answer and that you care what the answer is. And so I think some of that is even just like tone and how you ask the question, but
Sure.
That's sort of a peeve of mine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So
question.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know if this is a cliche question or not, but something I've actually found really helpful for me in an interview that's not as such a performative question is, instead of asking what a day is like, ask what the work culture is like. I found that to be really helpful in weeding out places that I didn't want to work at, even if it's the, you know, the best place in the world. You know, it would look great on your resume. There are some places you just don't want to work at. They're horrible. So that has been really helpful in me finding places, you know, I have found the interviewees to, you know, they have to, of course, or the interviewers to be honest. They have to be really protective of the place where they work. But if they're like, it's a very corporate, you know, environment and we're very, you know, formal and professional here, that's different than, you know, someone who would share more openly, like, about like, no, we, you know, Fridays are casual Fridays and there's a work from home option one day a week. And well, everyone's working from home, but yeah, that's one question I found helpful for me personally.
Sure. No, that's great. It's excellent that you shared this with us. One more thing that I have to point out, this entire session was on networking. What is the best thing that you've done this morning? You have shown up and participated and had the opportunity to network with a group of people that you may not have if you were not in this workshop today, right? How often do you think Anna and I would bump into each other? We're not even on campus. So the chance that we would meet is really low. But the fact that you're in this room today, in this Zoom room today, talking to all the people here means that you have made a step towards networking with people that you would not bump into on a daily basis, right? This is why I was saying, start now, start here. And every meeting that you attend throughout the day, every class that you are in, every person that you talk to is part of your network. How do you keep track of all of them? Anyone have tips? Catherine, do you know what's the best way to keep track of all the people that you meet?
I'm not sure. I suppose you could. I'm not sure. I would assume you would be checking your LinkedIn feed to see if they posted anything new. But if they don't post very often, they might not pop up into your feed. So I'm not sure how you would keep track of remembering those people, especially if you've never met in person.
Right, so it is hard. So one of the things that I've suggested to a lot of people is that you create a Google Sheet in which you add all the people that you're meeting, either virtually or in person. So first name, last name, contact information, LinkedIn profile link, first contact made, and then notes, right? Which means everyone in this workshop today should be on your sheet. You should know that you attended this workshop at Columbia today. And then you can keep track of how to follow up with all the people that you've met. And if you did that in a disciplined way, you can imagine how many people you'll connect with and be able to stay in touch with. Because remember, when you're networking, it's not just for one day or for that one job or for the first 3 jobs, it's for life. Every connection that you make is for life. And some will dry up, some you will not stay in touch with, and some you will stay in touch with, you know, such that you may have been colleagues at some point and then you will become friends, right? The world is really small, it's global, and yet it's really small. So every person that you cross paths with, they are going to be part of your network for your entire life. So think of it like that. I mentioned to you at the start of this that Izabela and I are both graduates of the journalism school, right? We didn't meet when we were in school. We were many years apart. But when I was hiring for the career services group at the journalism school and I saw Izabela's resume, the first thing I noticed was that she's an alumna of the school. And so obviously I wanted to meet her. And then we became colleagues at the journalism school. Then I moved to the Department of Statistics. Izabela stayed at the journalism school, but we were friends by that point. And when I heard of an opening at Math Finance, I thought of Izabela. And when Izabela thought of it, she thought, okay, let me find out from Anusha, how is it to work in an area that is outside of the School of Journalism, right? And we were able to talk about it. We were able to discuss our careers and figure out what would work for us because we already had this connection. So think of it as an investment for life. And now, of course, Izabela and I are really good friends. So if you were on campus, you would often see us walking to Junzi Kitchen to pick up lunch, or, Learner Hall, where you go to the second floor and you can have that all-you-can-eat buffet, which we try and avoid, right? But
One day.
So, was that?
One day.
One day in a month.
We'll be back one day.
Yes, one day we'll be back.
Back soon.
Yeah. So the point I'm making is that your network is life. You don't know where you're going to find your friends and your future colleagues. So make an investment and try and stay in touch with all the people that you connect with. Right? Any other questions or anything else, please feel free to reach out to us. We've shared our LinkedIn profiles, both Izabela and I, and I'm sure Rachel and Francesca will be open to it as well. Thank you for attending. And anything else you want to say, Izabela, before we say?
Thank you very much. So nice to meet everyone in this big thank you to those individuals who shared their profiles, LinkedIn profiles, for volunteering, to those of you who turn on your cameras. It's always good to see faces.
Absolutely.
Great to know you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca and Rachel, for organizing the talk.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Great
you.
group. It was nice to meet all
Thank you.
y'all. Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.